John, welcome back to Portland and GOSCON. I think we met in 2006, so you've been with us for quite a while. We first met after I read you co-authored a document called the Open Technology Roadmap that was commissioned by the Department of Defense. And at the time, it was a pretty groundbreaking document, and it was very readable. That's what I liked about it. I was wondering if you could tell me what the Department of Defense has done around open source policy between now and then, what's happening today.
So recently, about a year ago, the Department of Defense CIO office put out an updated open source software policy memo, kind of describing what open source software is. It's allowed to be used in the Department of Defense, that it's a commercial item. So that's been the most recent updated document that's come out of the work that we've continued to work on. We're also, hopefully in the next few months, coming out with kind of an open technology field manual about more of the tactical, how do you actually go out and be more open, either build more open or use more open source software on a military program. So that's the next phase of something that'll be coming out in hopefully the next few months.
The last memo that came out last fall, one of the things that it included that was surprising and I think positive, but maybe a lot of people don't know about, was I believe it authorized military personnel to actually contribute to open source projects.
Yeah, so it kind of just described, it didn't go into as much detail as I would have liked for it to have, but did say it's okay to actually push changes back out to the community given security needs and things like that. So that it's actually okay to interact and be a part of a community, not just be a consumer of it, but actually have a more of a two-way street, two-way dialogue with an open source software community in the developer forums.
So I think you've been very involved in creating a community of developers that work in the defense industry. You maintain a Google list that I kind of monitor from time to time, and there's some pretty active communication and exchange of ideas and tools. Some of it seems to be technology, some of it seems to be policy. Well, how's that list grown? How's that community grown over the last couple of years?
I think we really started about a year and a half ago. Just kind of decided that we just need some place out in the open where you could just find people who were doing open source software development. I mean, the communities have been out there, but primarily they've just been email lists. People just find each other in various commands across the country, and we just thought it'd be a good time to kind of just uncover, make it a little bit more explicit that the group's out there. So the Military Open Source Software Group was basically started about 18 months ago in collaboration with Josh Davis at Georgia Tech Research Institute. And so we had a conference down there about a year ago, and then we had a second conference in D.C. Last August. And so it's kind of grown, and it's very grassroots, very bottom up. Very much about people just trying to get together and solve problems that are out there, for the warfighter. And so really just trying to, just meet the needs of people that are out there, and do it in somewhat of a little bit different from the military, doing it a little bit more in the open. And actually, sharing lessons learned and finding common solutions to common problems.
So for people that aren't familiar with how, and it's probably most of the world, aren't familiar with how open source is being used in the military, what are some of the applications, what are some of the branches of the service that are seeing it actually used in practical terms?
Well, so one of the best examples of open source software that was recently converted into open source software is a tool called Falconview, which is it's a route planning geospatial tool. The military funded it about 15 years ago. About 2 years ago, they converted it into open source software. It's run by Georgia Tech, GTRI, Georgia Tech Research Institute. And so that came out, and so that's been used by, I think that the numbers are anywhere between 50 to 70,000 Marines, soldiers, sailors, and airmen who are actually out in the field and using it to do route planning. We're going to drive down this road and go this way. And so that's probably the best example of open source being used in the military, because it's very low cost from the community and what the military pays for it, but a huge bang for the buck. There's also a company that I work at, RadientBlue. They have an open source video tool called Omar, an open source raster-based geospatial tool called Awesome. It's interesting that the geospatial tools have become much more mature in the last 5 years, and so you're seeing a lot more uptick. The Open Source Geospatial Foundation's been pushing tools. But those are probably the best examples of tools that are being used in the military. I mean, outside of the typical kind of developer tools or cyber tools people use for information assurance and things like that, because that entire field seems to be ruled by open source.
And so outside of the military complex.
And I forgot to add in Red Hat Linux as well, JBoss.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest, that is definitely the biggest install base is Red Hat Linux.
Okay, thanks. So what about outside of the Department of Defense? Are you finding either the policy or the applications that they're investing some resource, whether it's their own personnel or contract personnel, are you seeing these being used outside of the Department of Defense?
In the rest of the federal government?
In federal government or anywhere else?
Yeah, I think you're definitely. I'm seeing a lot more chatter on various email lists that I'm on about people who are just looking for, especially for state and local governments who are looking for cheaper solutions because they're just running out of money and they're looking for savings anywhere that they can. So if they can, remove Microsoft Office and put in Open Office and, or Google Docs or something that they can actually just save money on. That seems to be one of the driving factors, and seeing a lot on more the state and local governments. I think the federal government is looking at more of, they want flexibility and increased competition in their systems. When they bid for systems, they don't want to be locked into one vendor or one product. So seeing a lot more people just actually discussing and saying, oh, there are actual options out there available for things like databases and more commodity-driven pieces of information technology.
Okay. And did you put on a military open source conference this last year?
Yeah.
Was it a conference or an unconference?
It was a little bit of both. So it was kind of we did one was kind of a bar camp, and then one was more of a typical kind of conference of here's who's going to come and speak. We had some people in uniform come and speak and talk about what the needs are out in the field. And then some people who just showed up and started talking about the tools and techniques and things that they're actually building on and deploying.
Okay.
Last August in Washington, D.C.
All right. And if people are interested and they want to sign up for their Google group, it's a good way to connect.
It's MIL OSS, MIL_OSS.
All right.
Or just miloss.org is the website.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you for having us.